Good morning. Today we're going to start chapter 2, and you'll notice that chapter 2 is titled The Metric System. In the metric system, there are some things that you need to be familiar with. You need to understand what the metric system is, and you need to get familiar with the metric prefixes. On page 30 in your textbook, it gives you some information about your fundamental qualities, like your base units, and it talks specifically about base units for distance, mass, and time. And then it introduces those prefixes that you need to become familiar with, like kilo, deci, centi, and milli. Please remember, kilo means 1,000 times bigger than whatever it comes in front of. So if it's a meter, a kilometer is 1,000 meters. When we go to the prefix deci, deci actually means a tenth. So think of deci like dime. So decimeter is actually 1/10 of a meter. When we move to centi, centi means hundredth. So like a cent, 1 cent, 1 penny is 100th of a dollar. A centimeter is 100th of a meter. When we move to milli, milli actually means 1,000th. So whatever your meter number is, you divide that by 1,000, and that'll give you your millimeter number. So please make sure you get familiar with those metric prefixes and how to use them. That covers the ones on length. Your book then moves in to talk about volume, and how the units for volume are derived quantities. And the derived quantity that we generally use is the centimeter cubed. However, volume can also be measured in the units of liters, and you can add prefix units to those as well. So I could have milliliters, which is abbreviated as a lowercase m, but a capital L. Okay, and so milli again meaning thousand. So we're talking about 1,000th of a liter. All right. So please make sure you remember that. One of the things your book also mentions is that when you're dealing with a centimeter cubed by definition is the same thing as a milliliter. If you plan to work in the medical field, they actually call a centimeter cubed a cc. So 1 centimeter cubed equals 1 cc, which is equal to 1 milliliter. So you will need to be able to do those conversions as well. When we're talking about mass, the unit we use to measure mass is the gram. And again, I can add those metric prefixes as I need to change the size of the number. When we deal with temperature, in the United States, we measure temperature in degrees Fahrenheit, but that's not a scientific unit. So your temperatures will be given in degrees Celsius. So you will need to be able to work with degrees Celsius for those. Your book also mentions that on the degrees Celsius scale, at 0 degrees Celsius, that's when water freezes, and at 100 degrees Celsius, that's when water boils. Generally, when you're at 1 atmosphere pressure. Your book then moves on to talk about time and how the base unit for time is the second, but I can again add those metric prefixes. So if I need a millisecond or a decisecond, I can use those as I go. Then your book moves into SI units. The SI stands for the System International, which means that it is used all over the world. Let me say that of all the countries in the world, there are only 3 that don't use the SI system as their basic system of measurement. We are one of those 3 countries. So you're going to have to learn how to convert between SI units and imperial units as we use them in the United States. And again, that is because the United States has not converted to SI units. And so there's lots of practice in these sections. Make sure that you learn all the metric prefixes. Make sure you learn the prefix, what its symbol is, and what it means. because you will be using those and you will have to convert between different units. In section 2.3, your book then goes to talk about making flashcards to help you remember your prefix units. You can do that if you choose to. The more you can do to help your brain learn this information, that will move that from your working memory to your long-term memory, as you talked about in chapter 1. So the more you practice with this, the better at this you will get. In section 2.4, your book also introduces the concept that when you have a number as an answer, that number must have a unit. And that without that unit, that answer is meaningless. And so when you're adding or subtracting numbers, your numbers have to have the same unit in order to add or subtract them. If they don't, then you have to convert them to the same unit before you can add and subtract them. When you go to multiplying and dividing, though, your units don't necessarily have to be the same. But like with your area, if you're measuring area and you're getting your length and your width, you know you're going to multiply those. So if you get your length and your width in centimeters, at the end when you start working with your units, you know you're going to have a centimeter times a centimeter. Well, when you multiply a centimeter times a centimeter, the answer you get should have the units of centimeters squared. So please pay attention to that as you're doing problems in Chapter 2, especially with your units. Your review quiz for Chapter 2 is on page 47, and then you can find the answers for that review quiz on page 48. If you need anything at all as you're working through this chapter, please reach out to me. Remember, we have our Collaborate sessions starting, so if you have any questions or concerns, I am available. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and thank you so much.